my children and all that. And I was very active in the Parents Association. And the reason we got active in the Parents Association was that when the children in the first grade at that time, it was a theory that the first grade children could use a 2-hour nap in the middle of the day. So they'd go to school from 9 to 11, and then from 11 to 1 they were supposed to go home and have lunch and have a nice rest and so on, and then come back to be there from, I guess, 1 to 3 or 2 to 3, something like that. So that left a big gap from 11 to 1 for the middle of the day when the mothers had some free time, so-called, after their children were supposed to be asleep. So we had a group that we had been organized before that was called the Child Study Association. The Parents Child Study something. And we had somebody from the Child Study Association who came down and lectured to us and so on. And so we enjoyed those things very much. And then we decided to get the parents all together and have our own association. And they were practically all Jewish women. And we said, oh dear, we have to get somebody who's not Jewish. And there was one name, it was a very lovely lady, and her name was Ruth Scarcella. So we said, oh, that's great. And we got Ruth Scarcella, we approached her and asked her would she'd like to be on the Parents Association board and all that. And she said, oh, she'd love to be. And I told her, we chose you because you're Italian. She said, oh, no, I'm not. She said, I'm Jewish. She said, I married an Italian. That was so funny. Did you ever have contact with the Scarcella boys in school at PS 180?
Not that I can recall.
There were a couple of little kids. They were as cute as could be. They were adorable. But were they a tough couple of kids to handle? They were awful mischief makers, such mischief makers. In whatever grade they were, they caused havoc, Anyway, so she was Jewish, so we couldn't find an Italian or somebody to be as one of the parents' group. But we managed. We even put on a show. We had a wonderful show. We got the fathers to be in the show. Daddy sang with a whole group of other fathers. They were depicting fathers. We had a chorus line. We sang songs, and we presented the play and all that stuff in the auditorium. I don't know if we charged money for it, but we all enjoyed it, and it was lovely. I think I may still have one of the folders for the what do you call it? The programs.
Mm-hmm.
And it was lovely, very nice. Had a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Robinson, I kept in touch with her. She was very interested in sex education for children.
Uh-huh.
And so I invited her to be a speaker.
There's a little commotion going on outside.
What's that?
Somebody revving their engine.
It sounds like they have a stuck horn, too.
That's a car alarm.
Car alarm?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
That's for what?
They're all the electronic devices are, yeah. Got a lot of action going on here.
Yeah. Well, anyway, she came to the school. She gave a very interesting lecture
Mm-hmm.
about her views on sex education and so on. It was very nice. And I think Will and I were invited to her what is the super anniversary?
25th?
25th, I guess. So we went to her 25th wedding anniversary. She had a big do at her house.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to go shopping to find something that we could afford that was silver. Which we finally did. And that was it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, do you remember when your mom bought this house?
Yes.
Mhm.
My mother was widowed, when I was about 2.
Mm.
And I don't remember my father at all. All I know is what people have told me about him. I just know that I was riding. My earliest memory actually is when I was riding in a railroad car and sitting with my mother and trying to amuse her because I didn't know what happened. And she was actually bringing the coffin back. He had gone away for to go. He had a cold or something, and he went to the country for a week to recoup, and he died there.
Mm.
It seemed that the higher altitude or something was not a good thing for him at that time, or at least that was what they said when he had a heart attack, and he died. And oh, you wanted to know about how my mother got this house?
Uh-huh, sure.
Well, my mother, as I told you, was a widow since the time I was 2.
Mhm.
And so she went to work immediately because she had no source of income. And she went to work at my father's place where he used to work. He and his very best friend, who had come over from Europe with him, his friend had the money to open a factory and make fancy women's dresses and suits, coats, and the stuff that was sold at Arnold Constable. That was their main.
What was their name? Arnold Constable?
Yeah, that was a department store from quite a long time ago.
Okay.
And
Very
their
fancy.
claim to
Uh-huh.
distinction was that Eleanor Roosevelt bought all her clothes there.
Oh.
And my father's job was to be the designer and the cutter, and that was very important because how they did this cutting stuff was, and they didn't have machines then. I mean, for doing that stuff, they piled up layers and layers of cloth that they were going to cut to a particular pattern, and my father was supposed to line it all up, and then just freehand do the cutting. First, he lined it up and wrote on a paper, I think, and then he used his special scissors and cut it. And that was a very responsible job. He did that. And then when he died, there was no source of income, and they said, "Come to work for us. You can be a bookkeeper." So that's what she did. And I think as soon as the shiva was over, she went to work. And it so happened that 6 months after he had died, my grandfather died, my mother's father. And so my grandmother was a widow as well. So the 2 women moved in together. And it was customary at that time, if somebody died, you moved to a different location. So the 2 women moved together to the Bronx, where we lived with my uncle Nat, my mother's younger brother. He was unmarried. And we lived in the Bronx at I used to know the address. Anyway, in East Bronx, it was a very nice area at that time. But now, of course, well, several years ago, it was a terrible place. And my mother was working all this time, and my cousins, the Sternbergs, I was pitied as an orphan, poor little orphan. That was my main contact with older people. And the place I used to love to go to was my cousin, the Sternbergs. I used to go there and spend Saturdays there. And because they had a wonderful library. They had one room, that was just lined with books. They had what they used to call the Harvard Library, with they had a bookcase, special bookcase, where the cover, it was a glass enclosure, and then you picked it up in the front and slid the whole thing into the back on the top of the books. And then you could choose whatever book. And they didn't say, don't go here or don't go there. They let me read whatever I wanted. And I was happy. I spent the whole day there. They brought me lunch or they called me for lunch and so on. But otherwise, I was just, and my cousin Deborah, who was the oldest daughter of their family, invited me to come with her to synagogue, to the, they had that special group for young people, and I was too busy. I couldn't leave my reading. So that's what I did. I just read all day, and I was as happy as a clam. And then got a little older, and I used to go to Friday night dinner and spend the weekend with them. They lived at 499 Bedford Avenue in Brooklyn. It was an elegant home. Oh, what a beautiful home. Very big garden and everything. And why am I telling you all this?
Because I went there too, and I saw those big windows.
What?
They had a mirror in the middle of the front room, and then they had the windows that went all the way down to practically the floor.
It really was a very
It was
beautiful
a beautiful
house.
house.
Oh, this was the
Very elegant.
Sternbergs in
Sternberg.
Yeah.
Bedford.
Yeah.
Cousin Hendela.
Sternberg.
Yes,
Sternberg.
Right.
There's,
All right,
yes.
but you were living up in the
Solomon H.
Bronx.
What?
You were living up in the Bronx.
Right.
And then your mother decided to look for a home back in Brooklyn, and that's
No,
what happened?
no.
Or what? How did you get back
And
here?
They were, and everybody was concerned that my mother was a widow, and not, they wanted her to date, and get married, and being a woman and married was the greatest thing.
Right.
Not to have to work, and all that. So they were always trying to find shidduchs for her. And they found a very nice man in Boston, as a matter of fact. And he had 2 children, a boy and a girl. And I remember spending a day, he came down to court my mother, and he wanted to marry her. And his children were delightful. I never had such a wonderful time that weekend or that day, that when I played with them, I had kids nearly my age, and we just had a wonderful time, which was quite different from being surrounded by adults all the time.
How old were you at the time?
How old was I?
Hmm.
Well, when my mother married Pearl's father, I was just 11.
Okay.
So this must have been
So you-
between the ages of 11 and 6.
Okay.
And did I tell you the story about how my grandma got me into school?
I think you did.
Okay, so now
She
we
she
have all that.
she lied about your age.
That's right.
That's-
Come from a family of
I think we
liars.
did get that one.
Anyway,
It's a good story.
they were always busy renting shidduchs for her.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, she said she liked this man very much, and she didn't mind if we had to move to Boston and all that kind of stuff. But her main concern was that she wasn't completely sure that she could be completely fair with 2 children that were not her own, whether she would treat us all 3 the same way, or whether she would be prejudiced in my favor. And she wasn't, and she was a very fair-minded person. She wanted to do the right thing. And she couldn't trust herself evidently, or she didn't know, and she didn't want to experiment. So she turned that match down, and I was so unhappy. So she turned that down, and they kept looking. And finally they found Pearl's father, who was in some way related on another section of the family.
His
On
mother
the,
was a Sternberg.
On the Bernanke part of the family, I think.
No, his mother was a Sternberg.
What?
His mother was a Sternberg.
Oh, all right. Whatever. So so that's how they were introduced,
Right.
or they were sort of put together to get married, you know. And then they decided to get married. And I guess my grandmother pushed the match and all that, because I think she had plans for herself. She wanted to be free of the whole thing of taking care of me all the time, although she didn't really suffer, because my mother went to work and she took care of me, and she took such good care of me that I never learned how to ride a bicycle, because she was sure that I'd fall off and hurt myself, and I was never allowed to have 2 roller skates at one time for the same reason. And she said, I'll teach you how to ice, not skate, but to glitch. And we put on our galoshes and we went sliding on the ice. So I don't see that was any safer than having ice skates. But anyway, that was her idea.
So she was pretty protective.
Yes, she was very protective. I never had a bicycle. I never had even the 3-wheeler, nothing at all.
Mm-hmm.
But she was at the point maybe of buying me something like that, and she heard of somebody who fell and hurt his knee or whatever. So I couldn't get it. So I was kind of unhappy about all those things. But anyway, then, so they found Pearl's father, and they brought them together, and and I guess they agreed that would be good. The major thing was that he had never been married before, but she didn't know he came with a package. He came with his younger brother, and his younger brother's devotion to guppies.
Really?
My basement was filled with, if you can imagine, filled with big tanks, really big tanks of water, in which lived millions of guppies, because that was his hobby. And of course, and his grandfather, his father, which made it a grandfather. And he was the sweetest man you could see. Pearl, he was adorable. And when Pearl was born, he was ecstatic, especially since she was named after his departed wife. And he was such a nice man. He used to have a lot of fun when I was going to high school.
She was named after
what?
The brother who raised Guppy's departed wife?
No, he was not married.
Well, who was Pearl named after? Wasn't
after her father.
Oh, the grandfather.
Mother.
Oh, okay.
Her father's mother.
Oh, okay, Lewis's father's mother.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And
All right,
Lewis's,
I was losing the thread.
Lewis's father's wife.
It
Oh,
wasn't
Lewis's
Lewis.
father's wife.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was her grandmother, her dead grandmother. It was customary. You know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I had conflated that with the Guppy guy.
Yeah. So, and he was such a nice guy. So they needed a place to live, because they had not only Pearl's father, but the luggage that he brought with him.
And the Guppies.
But we didn't know about the guppies.
Okay.
And I don't think she really knew that his father and was coming to live with us, and
Okay.
that his brother was coming to live with us. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah. Okay. Go
I
ahead.
don't want to.
It's all right. That's why they have editing.
so when they came to Brooklyn, because he had a business in Brooklyn, and the kind of business he had was the what was it called again? Where he bought merchandise, or he had it on call, for merchandise. He didn't actually lay out the money, I don't think. And then a customer peddler, where he'd go traveling all around to different people, and he would sell the stuff that they needed to furnish their homes, and they couldn't afford to buy it in one piece, so he'd get it for them, and they would pay him back weekly, like 50 cents a week, 10 cents a week, whatever. It was, hard times for everybody. So that's what his business was. And it was a really a hard business because he had to keep at it, and it was not very productive, he said. But he needed a car for that, so we had one, and all that. Anyway, so we had to move to Brooklyn because we were perfectly comfortable in the Bronx, and my grandmother was coming with us too, so that she could keep house while my mother went to work. And so we needed a place to live.
Where was the dress company? Where was that business that your mom was working at then as a bookkeeper?
Yeah.
But where was it, in Brooklyn or was it in the Bronx? Or
What, where he worked?
where your father had worked and then your mom worked?
Yeah.
Where was that company based? Where
In
was work?
Manhattan, that's
Oh, in
in
Manhattan.
the middle of the dress
In the
store.
garment district?
Garment District,
Okay.
yes, that was Weisspiel and Company.
Oh,
was
okay.
the name of it.
All right. So you could commute from either end.
Right, right.
That was in Manhattan, where all the dress business was, you know.
Okay.
The women's wear business was.
But his business was more in Brooklyn? Is that why they
His
picked?
business was all in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay, so this would have been, it made it easier to get around.
So we had to move, and she and we so they went looking for a place to live in Brooklyn, because where he lived was not suitable, let's say. Anyway, so they looked all around Brooklyn, and they looked in Flatbush, and I remember and I think I may have gone with them one time to look at different homes, and they finally bought this house. It was 1 year old when they bought it, so it was in very nice condition. And the lady who had bought it, was wanting to sell it, had bought it when it was brand new, and she was widowed during that year, and she wanted to leave because, as I said, it was customary to leave the place where the deceased were left. So she moved, and she sold it to them. And anyway, so we lived upstairs, and it was one large apartment upstairs. And the front, that little hallway that we come in here, and that had a little bedroom in the first, in the front on top. And so that little room, I think, was whatever. Anyway, we occupied that apartment. It was a larger apartment. And then we had to have a large apartment, a house really, because of all the people that my mother found she was married to. So, at any rate, and my grandmother had full intentions, and she did carry them out, that she was going to leave as soon as the family was settled there, and she went off to look for her own new husband, okay, which she found, and they were very happily married. They lived in Williamsburg, and every Friday I used to have to go after school and to my grandma's house. I slept home. Oh, such aromatic things like gefilte fish and chicken, or what other recipe there was, and chicken soup. It was really very nice. And so I smelled up the whole subway. I brought that home. And that was it. And then, what else after that? And so I went to school here. I went to junior high school, and I went to, because in the Bronx, I was in the rapid advanced class here, where they take 6, 7, and 8, and they combine the 3 years. I was in that. So I was ready for junior high school here. And then I went there, and I went to the Utrecht High School, and that was, we were on 19th Avenue, 52nd, 53rd, and they're on 79th Street, 79th Street and 13th Avenue. Is it 13th Avenue? The Utrecht.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
this is between
So
12th
I-
and 13th maybe?
And the bus fare was a nickel, and they gave me a nickel every day. In fact, they gave me a dime every day. By they, I mean my mother. And,
Mhm.
but I saved it. I didn't go on the bus. I used to walk there and walk back, so I had 10 cents of my own. And since my grandmother was no longer with us, we did the cooking. Pearl's grandfather and I, and it was so funny because he used to be cooking the stuff, and I did the job of stuffing the neck, the neck. Have you ever had stuffed neck?
No. What would you put in it?
We used to make grimanas, You heard about grimanas?
I've heard of it, yes.
You've eaten it.
I've
Well,
eaten it too? Really?
very
You've made it?
delicious.
Yeah?
Oh, yes.
And what
Uh-huh.
you did was you took the grimanas and you mixed them up with flour and seasonings and stuff, and you stuffed the neck with it, and then you sewed that up so that it didn't leak. And so he said, you have to make sure that it doesn't leak into my nice soup. And we had a lot of jokes about the soup, and who was going to spoil the soup. And sometimes the chicken had little eggs inside,
Mm.
Did you ever have little chicken eggs?
I haven't had a chicken with eggs inside of it. I haven't.
Well, sometimes you'd get them.
Yeah.
What
That's
happened is
from your childhood and mine. They don't
you
sell
bought,
chickens
you bought
like
your
that.
chicken
Yeah.
at a chicken place
Yeah.
where they kill the chicken.
Uh-huh. And they would take the feathers off there too?
And then you either paid somebody 50 cents to pluck the feathers,
Mm-hmm.
or you saved the 50 cents and you sat down and you plucked them yourself.
Yeah.
And we used to save the 50 cents. So we plucked the chicken feathers, off. And so you had a real whole chicken, and when you disemboweled it, if there were eggs inside, they were yours.
Mm-hmm.
And you put them into the soup, and they were really quite delicious, very nice. So, so we used to tease each other about the eggs and stuff.
Was it your mom who also bought a fish and had a fish in the
No.
Oh, no,
tub?
that
Was that
my
Celia?
grandma.
That was Grandma.
When she made
Oh.
the filter fish, she used to
Oh.
have a live carp in the
Bathtub.
bathtub and keep it alive until she was ready to be beheaded. And she had a big, some kind of big long wooden thing, and she'd clonk it over the head.
Mallet.
And she'd disembowel it, and she'd take off all the scales. It was a lot. It was arduous work. Now it's very
The
easy.
Yeah.
scales, and the scales would fly all over. The
Yeah, you would go all over the place,
And then
no?
you'd have to grind the flesh, with a hand grinder. So anyway, that was the story of that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. All right, I think
You have to go.